Angelique Chengelis joins us, 365 Sports. She's had a pretty busy week this week away from college football. She's from the Detroit News, covers a lot of things, but Michigan. In fact, Angelique, thanks for your time. Before we get into everything, you have a book coming out, correct, in about a month. Is that right?
I think that's about right. It's a book with Triumph Sports, the publishers out of Chicago, and it's just looking at the championship season, the 2023 season. Michigan versus everybody is the title, and I believe it comes out mid-September. It's August. You're right. Next month. I'm still thinking it's July.
You got like 6 weeks before it comes out. You mentioned Triumph Books. So that little scab kind of got peeled back a little bit lately in the last day or four. That should only help promote the book, by the way. How does that register in Ann Arbor, Michigan?
It's been interesting to see the reaction to it. I think that Michigan fans are also reacting to rival fans and how they're reacting, like Michigan State and Ohio State fans on social media. But I get the sense just from doing a quick look at message boards that they're like, what does this exactly prove? No one's connecting any dots here. The NCAA didn't say any of the coaches knew what Connor Stallions was doing, et cetera. And they're also kind of blowing past the level 2 that's levied against Sharon Moore, the current head coach, for deleting 52 texts, and some are saying, well, it's a thread, and I'm not getting into that semantics, like whether it's a thread or text. I mean, it's still 52 texts, and that they say, that they're innocuous, and I'm not sure who's saying that they're innocuous. I haven't seen the text, but I think that everybody's just sort of looking past that. Now, I do think a couple of things that are mentioned later in the draft, like Steve Clinkscale helping a recruit set up an Instagram profile or what do they call when they have the blue check mark? I think that's sort of petty, but the other stuff is definitely worth your attention.
Well, $100 to a golf tournament, given the fact that a free private jet ride to a college is legal now. So I think you're getting silly there. So if they do, I mean, they had a structure last year during Jim Harbaugh's first suspension where they rotated through who the head coaches were. And then, of course, Sharon Moore was the head coach down the line. But a lot of those guys are gone now. And off with the Chargers or somewhere else with Mike McDonald in Seattle. So they've got, more new coaches than they've had in a while. If they do have to deal with the suspension again, do you think that will hurt them more this year than it did last year?
Well, I do think it would hurt them more. And remember, last year's suspension at the start of the season was school imposed. I mean, that came from Ward Manuel, Michigan's athletic director, not from the NCAA. And, those are usually done to basically curry favor, if you will, with the NCAA later, like, hey, don't punish us too much because we did this in good faith. It went that far. And I think it's too early to guess what Michigan, how they might respond. And it's certainly too soon because a notice of allegation, and certainly not a draft of a notice of allegation, doesn't lay out potential penalties. And this was a level 2 that's levied against Sharon. So I'm not sure Michigan's going to look at it as seriously as the level 1 charge that Harbaugh faced for misleading and lying to the investigators. But, in a hypothetical, potential, it would be hard. I mean, I think, you look at this staff and you're right. It's so new on the defensive side. And I mean, you've got Wink Martindale, a 20-year NFL veteran now running the defense. But he hasn't been in college football in 20 years. And then you look at they've elevated Kirk Campbell, who was a quarterback coach last year, to offensive coordinator. Grant Newsome is a 20-something who's now the offensive line coach. Ron Bellamy's been there, former player, receivers coach. It would be really hard to figure out. I think you look at Tony Alford, the running backs coach who came over from Ohio State. You look at Wink because just the experience he's had at the NFL level. And a third person, I don't know. I mean, it's a really new, youngish staff, and I think it'd be really hard to figure that one out.
We've discussed this, and we've done it before when teams have at least been under the microscope of the NCAA, who obviously they don't have as much bite, nearly as much bite as they once did. It used to be if they called, it was like the IRS sending you a letter about an audit. Let's just say there are violations, and I've even seen, like, I'm totally against, Angelique, any kind of vacating of anything. They're the national champions, no matter what. I hate vacating any kind of wins or championships. What do you think in the end, if anything, might occur? Because I can't see a bowl ban, because to me that it's happened, but it doesn't seem to happen as much anymore.
You're correct. And, I go back to, I've had a couple conversations in the past year, as you can imagine, with lawyers who handle NCAA cases. One of them actually used to work for the NCAA. And what they pointed out to me, and I've seen the rule, and I know I have it somewhere in my phone, I have to go look for it, is that generally wins are not vacated unless there were ineligible players used. And that's not the case here. So I do think that the NCAA would steer away from that. In terms of postseason bans, you're also right. I mean, the NCAA really has made a point to move past that because, look, the CFP is not owned. The NCAA doesn't own the CFP. And the bowl situation is different than it was. I think you look at, if the NCAA is going to be punitive, and, you saw it with Tennessee, I think that you would slap a huge fine on Michigan, and you can't reduce scholarships because with NIL and stuff, that doesn't really matter anymore. You could reduce the roster number. I think that could be punitive. You go from 105 to 95 or whatever it is they want to do that would be tough for a team to deal with. But you're right. In terms of vacating wins and postseason bans, I think that's not going to happen.
Angelique, this team on defense should be very, very good. Again, Wink Martindale comes in, like you said, and then they still have a lot of those guys back, even though they did lose a lot of leadership and moxie and guys like Mike Sainristil. But offensive is the question, and mostly because nobody has any idea at this point who the quarterback's going to be, right?
Yeah, I keep saying, I know there's a lot of positive, Michigan fans who are making predictions they're going to run it back, echoing what the players say. And I'm just not sure how you feel that confident when you don't have a quarterback in place. And you don't really have a big time receiver. You have a couple of very capable receivers, but I think they're lacking there. And the offensive line is going to be brand new. They lost 6 guys, got drafted. They went to the NFL last year off of that team. And, I think they brought in the guy, Josh Preeb from Northwestern, who was a captain. I think he'll be a very good piece for that offensive line. They're still trying to figure out who's going to start at center. I think that's also a very big competition to concern yourself with. But quarterback is huge. And I really think I just trying to look at this logically, and I think there was so much talk about Alex Orji coming out of camp, but Jack Tuttle, who is in his 7th year, he'll be 25, or maybe he is 25 already as the season nears. He's a guy who's had some starts. He was at Indiana. I could see them doing something like 2021, where you had Cade McNamara, a guy who didn't make many mistakes, and I see sort of Jack Tuttle in that way. And then you have packages for Alex Orji like they did for J.J. McCarthy then. Davis Warren's also in the mix. I don't mean to not mention him, but it's going to be very interesting to see because that's absolutely critical. And as you know, they open with a tough game, Fresno State, and then Texas.
Yep.
And if you don't have your quarterback, if that's not settled yet, and it's possible they keep the competition going, I think that's trouble.
Yeah, no, I have to tell you, and I mentioned this earlier we had Jake Trotter from ESPN on. It seems like Michigan's getting respect, but they're overshadowed. And a lot of it's because, again, that Harbaugh's gone, the staff changes, et cetera, and they lost a lot of players to the NFL. Quarterback's gone. Is it dangerous? Is it a little bit dangerous to sleep on Michigan with Texas in that game early?
See, I don't think so, and maybe I'm more doom and gloom here. I see this team losing 3-4 games, and I have them. I'm actually going to start working on my game by game for our preview stuff, and I envision them losing that game to Texas. I think that Oregon's going to be tough. Ohio State certainly in Columbus. And I think that there's always a hiccup game possibility. Could it be at Illinois or against Minnesota? I mean, that, who knows? But there always seems to be that kind of possibility when you have a team with question marks. And I didn't think that about Michigan last year. I thought they were a very good team. They're very solid. And you're also right. Going back earlier, I mean, the defense is going to be very sound. I think they do lack depth at linebacker. I think that if they had an injury there, I think that would they'd see a little bit of a drop off there. But defense should be very good. Wink Martindale's definitely got a lot of attitude. Doesn't like when people compare him to Don Brown because of the whole blitz first mentality. So he's got an edge to him, but I don't think you're going to see that much difference with this defense. But to your point earlier, they lost a lot from it. And Mike Sainristil, that's a huge loss just in terms of everything he brought on every level.
Were you surprised to see how Jim Harbaugh answered the question yesterday? I mean, he's kind of backed himself into a corner if they find anything that has anything to do with him. Yeah, no, that's true. And no, nothing surprises me that Jim Harbaugh says. And I thought actually when he left that I would have to, I no longer had to pay attention to what he said. I guess I still do. And I did see that quote and it seemed very vintage Jim, but he's been consistent from the moment the investigation was launched in mid-October. He said he knew nothing about an illegal scouting, sign stealing scheme, and he's been consistent. And maybe he felt more confident based on that draft notice of allegations that didn't connect any dots to Connor. But part of it, there was the level ones are being levied because of lack of cooperation. And, not having conversations with the NCAA and perhaps not giving phone records, et cetera. But my understanding back when the NCAA started showing up on campus is that all of the coaches did turn in at least their business phones and iPads. So, maybe it's personal phones that they wanted and those weren't turned over. But, I don't think Jim says anything unless he feels very confident that he will be proven correct.
Yeah, these things like last year they fed off of this, and Harbaugh was the ringleader and helped that with his attitude. But you eventually wonder if it just kind of wears the program down, the kind of a cloud. Hey, I want to bring this up, and we've had you on many, many times, and you're our go-to when it comes to Michigan. There's a Reddit post about you, and it's just unbelievable. No, it's freaking great about the fact that you're one of the few credible left as far as in the newspaper business, not the newspaper business, but covering college sports. You've been on the beat since 92. Doesn't rush to report anything. I just wanted to bring that up. Yeah, no, sometimes you can Google your name and then duck.
She said she's got a Reddit post about it. She's like,
oh my God.
Dear, oh, man.
No, I wanted to bring this up for our audience to know this. For our audience to know this, there's a bunch of people that respect a lot of what you do, your work, and we do too, and we're glad. So can you tell everybody, I don't want to get into do you want to share what you've been through in Cincinnati, Ohio? I think that's where you were the last 3 or 4 days.
Yeah, no, and I'll be going back again Friday. No, I appreciate what you said, and I did not know that, and that's very nice, and maybe it's just people respecting age, having been on the beat since 1992. That still cracks me. I think Sharon is the 6th head coach I've covered. I think I've lost count. But no, my mom, who is 93 and a half, how little kids always say half. I think that's about right. She's been dealing with some health stuff and, I got to get her healthy for the college football season because she has her very amusing insights into college football. And, the way she makes good points. It's the way she gets to them. My favorite is always when she talks about the offensive line and she calls it the line of offense or the defense of the offense. So, and it sounds goofy, but it actually makes sense. I guess it's, that's what the offensive line does. But yeah, she's dealing with some stuff and trying to make her less stubborn about things. And I think people with older parents understand that it's not always easy. But I appreciate it. And hopefully she'll be good to go, by the time the football season starts, because she certainly enjoys it.
Yeah. And she needed you to come give her some truth serum, and I'm glad you were able to do that. Right. That's important. Angelique, thank you very much. Good luck with her and also the season and the book that's released here in just about 5 weeks. It's Angelique Chengelis.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. The Detroit News with us on 365 Sports. Triumph Books is, I think, release date is September 24th, which is about 5 or 6 weeks away. I got to tell you,
pre-order it now if you're a Michigan fan or just interested.